trades. Well, praise the Lord for that. But here's the question. Who's going to hire the craftsmen and the tradesmen? Who's going to be the entrepreneur that has the capital to have the HVAC? Because right now the HVAC companies and plumbing businesses are being bought up by the hedge funds. Are we creating an environment that's based on work and rewarding work? No, we're not. But don't expect the average politician to understand it, because they're political whores who have never worked an honest day in their life. Has Hillary Clinton ever run a company? No. She's just like the rest of them, Republicans and Democrats. You could put them in a bag and shake them up and dump them out. You could barely tell them apart. We've got serious problems. We better get to the serious answers.
You're watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon House.
Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
Rumor has it that we got a big rescission package, an Elon Musk Doge rescission package coming up. Can you confirm it?
I can. We'll be sending that up on Monday or Tuesday whenever the House is back in session. They will get our first rescissions bill. And again, this has been proposed and we've talked about it. We want to make sure that Congress passes its first rescissions bill, including the Doge, and we will send more if they pass it. And so this is the first one is foreign aid, USAID cuts, many of the waste and garbage that was funding not only wasteful but hurting our foreign policy, but also the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and NPR. We'll be sending that up, and we're working with Congress. And we've had good conversations to make sure that they knew what was coming. They had some input as to changes that could be made to make it something that could pass the House, and we're excited for that to occur next week.
Simple majority, is that what you need up there?
Simple majority in both the House and the Senate, and the virtue of this is that it's a process that also evades the Senate filibuster. So again, it needs to pass, and so we are being very careful that we do not use our procedural opportunities and in going down a path that won't lead to passage. But we're pretty confident the House and the Senate are going to work with us to get this thing into law.
Welcome back to Truth Thursday. The Rob Maness Show is live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. Well, economic prosperity, common defense, protect liberty. These basic functions of government established by our Constitution are being threatened by the reality of our Leviathan federal government, in spite of honest efforts by Americans like Elon Musk and my friend Russ Vought there, you see at OMB. The Doge cuts we've seen so far are minuscule compared to what we will find if we keep going, and we have to. But can we get the existing cuts through Congress? And if those are a problem, what will happen when we get to the really big programs like, Social Security, welfare programs that sign up millions of people, or even the biggie, the healthcare programs that do the same, and they drive up costs and drive quality down? All of this is being attempted in the context of the big, beautiful bill that has passed by the House, but is likely to generate over $10 trillion in more debt over the next 10 years. And don't even get me started on Defense Department cuts and emerging challenges with artificial intelligence. Well, my guest today is Charles Sauer, who was just named in the Washingtonian as one of the 500 most influential people shaping public policy. Charles is the president of the Market Institute and has previously worked on Capitol Hill for a governor and for an academic think tank. We won't hold that last part against him. Charles, welcome to the Rob Maness Show.
Thanks for having me on. It's great to meet you, and at least in this way. We've actually worked together for quite a few years, so I appreciate your support over the years.
Yeah, absolutely, my friend. Absolutely. I was excited to know that I got the opportunity to get you on the show, so we jumped at it. And I'm throwing a lot of different thoughts at you today, but they're all linked in what you do. So congrats again on getting picked as one of the most 500 most influential people shaping public policy. But you're the president, CEO of the Market Institute. That's the team that put your name on that list, I'm sure. How do you guys do it? Let's go into that before we jump into the Doge stuff.
So, I mean, we start from the basic premise of getting the government out of the way. We get the government out of the way. And every place that you look in the markets, the thing that's holding markets back from more growth and from being better, providing more goods or more access or more quality is the government. And so, like, when we look at a lot of Trump's tariffs, I tend to disagree with that economic policy itself, but you could solve it by moving the regulatory state in the US and reducing regulations here. We could increase manufacturing jobs just by making it easier to manufacture, by lowering the barriers that businesses have for entry. And so when we look at markets, we just try to get the government out of the way, and we do a lot of writing on that, and we do a lot of video work, and we try to communicate to Capitol Hill staff. So I know you know this, but the average Capitol Hill staffer is around 28 years old. They're in their first job. They're well educated, but they haven't owned a business. They don't have a family. They don't own a house. And the fact is they're looking for information. So we try to take academic writing and make it so that 28-year-old staffer can not only understand it, but make it actionable.
Absolutely. Well, let's dive into that, and I'm going to come back to the tariff thing because I want to get your take on that court decision that just came out.
Yep.
But you know, the Doge thing, as it's taking shape, you wrote a great article that I want to talk about at length here about how Doge, if it keeps going and it gets done right, it can have some massive positive influence on especially the healthcare system. What do you talk about in that article from the healthcare system perspective so people will continue to support this effort? Because Musk is leaving today. You know, I think it's his last day or tomorrow. And he wants it to go on, too. I want it to go on. I think it's fantastic. But what do we need to be looking for, and how do we support it?
Yep. I think that there's really 2 points that I make in the article. And the first one is that this first generation of Doge has been good, but realistically, just shrinking the federal workforce doesn't really even scratch the surface of government waste and bureaucracy. And so what I'm really looking forward to is a Doge 2.0 that starts looking into, as you pointed out, like, you can make across the board cuts at the DoD, but it's just not the way it should be done. There are really good programs and important programs at the DoD. And if you go in with a scalpel, you could make it work more efficiently. But when you go in with a sledgehammer, it's not the best approach. So when Doge moves into its 2.0, I want it to actually start looking at how to make these programs more efficient. And in healthcare, how do we make the patient the actual payer or the client, the one that the healthcare market is trying to serve? So in the article specifically, I talk about an issue called site neutrality, which is where the government has decided that it's going to pay hospitals more for the same exact procedure than that they would pay for an independent doctor to perform. So if you go in and a doctor gives you a shot and you get that same shot from a hospital, the hospital can make 7 times the amount of money for doing the exact same thing. Is it more dangerous in one location over the other? No. Is it harder for them to do or more expensive? No. And in fact, it should be cheaper in a hospital, right? Now, all big box stores across the market are cheaper because they can buy the materials cheaper, HR's cheaper. It's just cheaper if you're in a big box store to provide service, but that's not how the government pays healthcare. And that's why we're seeing hospitals take over markets around the country, and we're seeing independent docs go away. So if they just fix this one thing, and honestly, it doesn't even matter. They could spend more money and solve it. They could bring independent docs up to the hospital level. That's not good public policy. That's not good fiscal responsibility. But if solving this one problem alone, we could actually put the healthcare market on a free market trajectory where we're putting patients back in control. And not only that, but doing it the right way, it saves $150 billion over 10 years. And it's a bipartisan supported issue right now. Last Congress, a bill actually passed the House with bipartisan votes that would have done at least a portion of this. It would have saved $40 billion over the 10 years, which is drug administration. But that was something. But given this big, beautiful bill, it seems like an issue that we could have fit in there.
Yeah, I mean, what's the downside? Because I'm dead serious when I said in my opening, the cost of healthcare is going up, quality's going down, and I see that as because of government intervention.
Well, savings on one side is a loss to another, right? So if the federal taxpayer is going to save this money, it's money that was going to hospitals. So hospitals pull out their tissues and wipe their eyes and come up to Capitol Hill and say, you can't do this to us. And realistically, one of their large arguments is rural hospitals. But if you talk to any staff member on Capitol Hill that's spoken to the rural hospitals, they know that this isn't going to affect rural hospitals. It also doesn't matter. You could move money back towards rural hospitals and spend the money the correct way instead of robbing from Peter to pay Paul. You could actually move money in a direction that helps something that the federal government wants directly. But in general, the problem here is that hospitals complain about it. We hear a lot of complaints about the Medicaid cuts that are in the bill. This would have been considered or would have been talked about as another healthcare cut. And while I think that it's defensible on the moral grounds that patients are going to have cheaper care and more access to care, I think that we have a lot of politicians that are scared to stand up and make what is that normal fight. But it's hard. Healthcare is a hard issue for politicians in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it is. Look, I live here in Mississippi, and it's tough. I see Republicans in the state legislature call for expanding Medicaid access, and our state has not done it. And that would be a disaster for all of us in this state, especially fiscally, but also about care. And I sat in a meeting with Governor Reeves. I think it was a little bit over a year ago, maybe about a year ago, and listen to him talk about the rural hospital issue. Charles, and he said, look, what we found is when we go to the rural hospitals that are bringing up the loudest complaints and those kind of things, they were designed for a population from 30 years ago that doesn't exist anymore, and they're still trying to pay enough people and have that same capability level at the same numbers as they were for a population that's left and gone to do other things in other places and has migrated. So they don't have the demographic population support to be able to have a hospital that size.
Look, this is the way markets work, right? If you see an opportunity, you see a population growing, and you put a business there. Well, if the population goes away, asking the taxpayers to continue funding that business doesn't make any sense. Now, maybe we can agree that taxpayers shouldn't fund it to start with, but it doesn't matter. We should let markets work and let markets decide. And in fact, I think it's even worse when you consider we're keeping rural hospitals in place, which gives people a reason to stay there. We're paying for rural internet connections, which helps people stay in these places instead of moving to where other people have found more efficient lives. And by efficient, I mean they're happier because the cost of life, their access to products and their access to services goes up, and people are happier when they move into these places. And now you can choose. You can live in New York City in the middle of the city, or I live in Burke, Virginia, which is outside of the metropolitan DC area where it's slow. We have walking paths around, but I'll tell you what, I've got 5G internet and a Walmart right across the street. It's an efficient way for me to live. And I think that we need to let markets decide this around the country. But it's another reason we need to get the government out of the way so people can make these decisions instead of really keeping people in these poverty situations or providing them the incentive to continue living there, when if they didn't have those incentives, they would move out and make the intelligent move that way.
Yeah, I like the
not the
idea,
intelligent, the common sense. I apologize.
Yeah, common sense. I like the idea of whether government's involved or not, let the market forces do what they do. Because, the internet thing, that's one of my things that I talk about now, the rural internet thing. I don't think that for $8 billion, we put one connection out in rural internet based on what some reports show. But the government didn't follow market forces. If they had, there would be Starlinks all over the place, which is a fantastic system and much cheaper, and you don't have to build infrastructure for it that doesn't already exist. It's just
amazing that the market solved that issue, right? The market, Elon saw an issue and saw that people needed connectivity. I've got a brother-in-law that has a sailboat and has Starlink. He now can work from home. He just happens to be in the Bahamas working from a 40-foot catamaran. So, this solves issues for people. It could also work for people in rural America without a problem.
Yeah, I got to meet him because I've had my eye on a couple of sailboats since I moved down here to the beach, but I haven't been able to take the plunge yet. All right, man. Well, we got to take a break here real quick. When we come back, I'm going to show a little clip from Congressman Thomas Massie, who's my friend and I think is the conscience of the United States government and the House of Representatives, and he should be, and he should stay there. We'll be right back with Charles Sauer of the Market Institute.
Hello, I'm Brandon House, and I want to tell you about Numi. This is a swish. You just take 2 capfuls, swish it around your mouth for 3 to 4 minutes, and you're absorbing, according to the studies, glutathione. Now, you don't need to take my word for it. There are over 162,000 studies on PubMed on the power of glutathione. It is a powerful molecule that studies show detoxes our cells. Some studies even show that glutathione might remove mercury from our brains, help to prevent things like Alzheimer's, dementia, and Parkinson's. Now, look, I'm not making claims. I'm just telling you what the research is showing about the powerful molecule glutathione. Numi is the product that contains glutathione. Melissa and I swish with this twice a day. We urge you to go to Numi.com/house1. That's Numi, Neumi.com/HOWSE and the numeral 1. Begin finding out about the power of glutathione while also supporting this broadcast network. Thank you.
Gentleman from Kentucky is recognized for 90 seconds.
Well, I'd love to stand here and tell the American people, we can cut your taxes and we can increase spending and everything's going to be just fine. But I can't do that because I'm here to deliver a dose of reality. This bill dramatically increases deficits in the near term, but promises our government will be fiscally responsible 5 years from now. Where have we heard that before? How do you bind a future Congress to these promises? This bill is a debt bomb ticking. Congress can do funny math, fantasy math, if it wants, but bond investors don't. And this week, they sent us a message. Moody's downgraded our credit rating, and the bond investors who buy our debt and finance our debt demanded higher interest rates on the 10-year note, the 20-year note, and the 30-year note. What does this mean? Very soon, the government will be paying $16,000 of interest alone per U.S. family. And what are we telling them? Instead of taking care of that problem, we're going to give you a $1,600 tax break. Under the taxing and spending levels in this bill, we're going to rack up, the authors say, $20 trillion of new debt over the next 10 years. I'm telling you, it's closer to $30 trillion of new debt in the next 10 years. Mr. Speaker, we're not rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic tonight. We're putting coal in the boiler and setting a course for the iceberg. If something is beautiful, you don't do it after midnight. I oppose this bill.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentlemen.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Truth Thursday. And look, we're going to talk about the truth here. And I voted for Donald Trump 3 times now, fully supported him, worked with his campaign, was a surrogate for their Veterans Coalition, and put my money where my mouth is through Gator Pack. And we continue to do that. But Tom Massie is the conscience of the United States Congress when it comes to this kind of stuff. And my guest today is Charles Sauer, CEO of the Market Institute. Charles, I had to show that because nobody can put the truth out about a budget bill like Congressman Massey can. And I wanted to give you a chance to talk about the national debt for just a second from your perspective on where we're going and what are some of the things that we even have may have in place that can help us reduce that debt and get this back under control, because we've got a lot of stuff that's spilling out of the budget bag that's got to be stuffed back in, or there's going to come a huge explosion and the United States of America will be insolvent all of a sudden.
Yeah, I mean, first off, let me start with Massey. The only thing that's disappointing about that speech on the floor is that he wasn't wearing his debt clock while he was doing it. I don't know if you noticed that, but
I didn't notice that. Yeah.
He definitely, he's somebody who spent his own brain power and own money building a pen and giving it to the freshman congressman. And I think really bringing an issue to life. When you think about Ron Paul, he was able to finally achieve some of the stuff he was doing at the end of his career. And I think that Massey's had kind of a better trajectory to that because he does say what he believes and votes how he believes. And I think that although he gets attacked for that sometimes, people really do follow him and understand him and know where he's coming from. And he's been consistent with that over the course of his career. Now, regarding the debt, I mean, again, it's one of those amazing problems that is almost uncontrollable. But I can tell you that there's a book getting ready to come out by I believe it's already for pre-sale. It's an author. His name's Kurt Couchman. He currently works for Americans for Prosperity. And he just works on the debt. And he worked on Capitol Hill on the debt. He's been working in a think tank on the debt. He has a balanced budget amendment. Heck, his license plate says balanced budget amendment guy. This is a guy who has his life's focus is on figuring out how to get this done and what politically we can do to get us back on the right track. So I would start by buying that book. And then I would also look or start understanding the idea that realistically, most of the spending that we do in the budget is already on the rails. It's already moving, and there's almost nothing that Congress can do about it yearly. They actually have to do a big bill to address these things, and that's going to take a bipartisan effort. Everybody's got to understand that we're in a bad place, join hands, and jump into the pool together because it's going to be cold. They're going to have to make dramatic cuts to do dramatic things, but they're going to have to do it together. Now, Kurt's book talks about a slower way to do it, a methodical way to get there. But in the general, I believe that we're going to have to actually learn how to grab hands across the aisle. We're going to have to do it peacefully. And we're going to have to really look at a lot of these welfare programs. For instance, Social Security. The left really, really likes Social Security. The right wants to privatize it. Privatizing it's wrong. Really loving it's wrong. But if we made it into something of a welfare program where only the neediest people in retirement got it, I think both parties could truly get behind that if it meant that it was going to be a well-funded, sustainable program that wasn't a Ponzi scheme. I think that could work. And when we look at Medicare, there's so many cuts that could be made. I mean, there's even in programs I support, like Medicare Advantage, there's upcoding all over the place because the incentives were set up wrong when it was created. So I think that there's a lot that can be done, but I do think it's a long-term approach. B, it's going to have to be bipartisan. And C, politicians are going to have to get used to that cold water, but they're going to need to take that responsibility of leadership that they ran for office for and really go after it.
Yeah, I think that's why you heard Russ Vought in that first clip talk about we're sending it up this rescission bill. We don't have to get past the filibuster from that perspective, but they're sending it up in bite-sized chunks right now to see if they can get the votes and be successful. That kind of makes sense. But man, people are really upset that more DOGE cuts are not in this big, beautiful bill. What are the technical issues? Are there any technical issues that prevents that, or was this just an attempt to try to ram the spending bill through and make as many good changes as we could by increasing spending and making the tax cuts permanent. I know that's a goal that everybody wants to do because it's good for the economy in the long run. But what else is out there? And this is why I want Doge to stay in place and it get even bigger because of the systems you talked about: Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, all welfare, all of those systems have huge fraud, waste, and abuse. And Doge has just scratched the surface on it.
Yeah, they're just starting to scratch the surface. Well, I think we're talking about two different bills. I think we have the reconciliation bill and then we have this rescission bill. And I've just seen some of the headlines on the rescission bill today. And one of the pieces to the rescission bill is it's questionable whether Trump had the constitutional authority or just the authority to make some of the cuts he made. And so while we might support the cuts and we might oppose the cuts, what really needs to happen if we're going to lock them in is that Congress needs to take action and codify some of these things. And the reason to do it in the bite-sized bill is because, you know, you're going to run into some parochial problems if you do a big bill. But if you go with smaller bills, then you only have one group that opposes it. You can have enough votes that you can actually lock some of these in. When we're talking about the reconciliation bill, it's kind of a different animal. It has to follow some different rules, and it's called the Byrd Rule is the main one. So the question is, does a provision affect the budget, or does it have some sort of an income effect? And so if it doesn't, then it is not allowed in the reconciliation bill. And that's what actually creates the privileged nature of the bill, where they do not have to overcome the filibuster. And the filibuster is what really all of this is built to avoid, and why they would go up in these certain ways. Now, I'm a supporter of the filibuster. I think everybody should be a supporter of the filibuster. But there's one person who's never going to be a supporter of the filibuster, and it's not just this president. It's all presidents. Yeah. The filibuster is one of the biggest headaches that a president can face, because that means a minority in the Senate can stand up and say no. And I think it's one of the most important pieces of Congress and one of the most important pieces of the Senate. But it is definitely the largest headache that the president faces. And so while I understand the frustration with the filibuster, it's also what helps the right keep the left from running over the country if somebody else is in that office. So I think it's an important thing, but it's why everybody needs to jump through different procedural hoops to actually move a bill.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I'm a huge supporter of the filibuster. I was not happy to see parts of it trimmed off, for like judges, those kinds of things. In my opinion, is the wrong thing to do. Probably because I've run for the U.S. Senate and studied it a little bit harder than most people. But you know, we're starting to hear from senators in the Republican Party, very strong advocates of President Trump. Just today, I seen a report from Rick Scott saying, I've got some problems with this big, beautiful bill that we're going to have to fix. Now, I didn't get to see him go into any detail. I'm hoping he's talking about some more added cutting of fraud, waste, and abuse to get the fat out of this bill as much as possible before it actually gets voted on and sent to the president. Are you hearing anything?
Yeah, so I'm working with an office to get a couple of cuts in there, and we're hoping that there's going to be some changes made. In fact, it's on site neutrality. There's a senator that's working on it and has some ideas. The question is how is the procedure going to work in the Senate? Is leadership going to take ideas and put the top ones that they need in the bill? Are there going to be amendments that are offered and voted on the floor? And what does that look like? And so that's still being figured out over in the Senate. I think it's going to be decided and worked out pretty quickly, but there's definitely senators that are working to make some changes to the bill. I can tell you, knowing the Senate for as many years as I do, there are going to be things that you agree with and I don't, and I agree with and you don't, and things we both agree with that nobody else agrees with. But there's going to be, it's the Senate. I love the Senate because, you know, the House has a lot of rules behind it. It's like a fencing match. There's just rules all over the place. But the Senate, as you know, is more of a street brawl. And so you never know what senators are going to come up with to put in there. But I look forward to watching the way that it works its way through the floor. But I do know at least one senator is working on some good stuff to put in there. I'm sure that some other senators are working on some others.
Yeah, one of the big issues in the House that actually got Chip Roy to vote yes on it was the Medicaid eligibility rules coming into play. The work requirements coming into play a lot earlier than they were originally forecast to be. So I see all that as good. I mean, improving the policy on programs that are very popular, like Medicaid. I mean, who doesn't want to help poor people get medical care? That's something that I think most people sign up to. But it's the whole when you open it up to fraud, waste, and abuse, like this Medicaid expansion under the Obamacare program that we're fighting here in Mississippi, and I think there's like 12 other states that are doing that, that are still fighting it, because we know that if we go ahead and take that expansion, it just opens up the aperture for more fraud, especially in waste and abuse. And nobody that lives in a state that has a small revenue base can afford to take that on, because eventually you have to pay that piper, don't you?
Yeah, I find the Chip Roy getting on for the Medicaid expansion interesting, because I've work requirements have always been considered one of the worst additions to a Medicaid program to make it more efficient. It's hard to administer. It opens itself up for more fraud. It changes incentives in the marketplace. And so there's all sorts of problems with work requirements, which I've found odd for him to get on because of that. But so my assumption is there's more to that discussion. But at the same time, what I find interesting about Medicaid, and I think that this is something that Republicans need to spend more time on, it's that we need to stop bringing the economic arguments to these moral debates, because Medicaid has some real problems. But we can admit that Medicaid was formed for a good reason, and that's that people that aren't wealthy and the poor people in the country might need some assistance on healthcare. But when the ACA expanded Medicaid, what they were doing was forgetting the people that are the program's actually meant to do. It's really easy to sign up that like middle ground of people who are close to being able to feel that they can afford healthcare coverage. I can tell you who it's really hard to support. It's really hard to get to those people that qualify for Medicaid but haven't signed up. Now, I think they would have gotten a lot of Republican support, and I think a Republican would have gotten a lot of Democrat support if they would have said, hey, you know what? Let's take some more money. Let's not expand the program, but let's actually try to sign up some of the people that should be on this program. Or they could have said, we're not going to expand until we sign up the people that aren't going to be on this program. Now, if you're the government bureaucrat that's getting bonused or getting kudos or a raise based on how many people you sign up, that's a bummer of a program. But if you're trying to actually service the program the way it's meant to be serviced, then actually going out and figuring out how to sign those people up and get them healthcare, the poorest in the country, the ones that don't know that the program exists, those are the people that we should have pushed for. And I think if you win that moral argument, then these other ones fall off. And then we can actually talk about reducing who qualifies for Medicaid, which I think is the argument that Chip Roy should have been on. And for that matter, the argument that Thomas Massie is on.
Yeah, and Chip may be on that. I just probably don't have enough knowledge about what's going on with him. But he's another friend, and I support him implicitly because he fights
one
for
of the
the right
best
stuff.
on free market healthcare. He's one.
Yeah, exactly.
Chip Roy knows what's going on the entrepreneurship fringes of healthcare better than anyone. I've wanted him to come more in the Thomas Massie camp over the years, but we'll see. I think he's a great guy. I just on the work requirements in general, I think he's wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as a person who had a grandmother get widowed at age 39 with 12 children in the 1940s, and Medicaid was needed when she was eligible for it, they got her signed up for it and everything. And it's something that I support just implicitly. We got to take another break, Charles. When we come back, though, protect liberty or provide for the common defense. there's a big issue out there. It revolves around this thing called TikTok. And Charles has got some comments on that. We'll be right back with Charles Sauer of the Market Institute.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Is the government tracking you? Do they have access to all your data? Well, if you go to worldviewtalk.com, you'll find out about a cell phone company that, well, does not store your data. They don't do that. This is what they're known for. They don't store your data. You have privacy. You're not being tracked. That's why a lot of folks are turning to worldviewtalk.com. You'll find their prices are very competitive. All the details are there at worldviewtalk.com. Again, worldviewtalk.com. Oh, while you're there, not only do they have cell phones that aren't tracking you, you can find out about how to get a satellite phone. Should the whole system go down and you want to communicate with a family member or a loved one, you might want to have a satellite phone. Or how about their solar generators? They have great solar generators. Check them all out right now. Worldviewtalk.com, worldviewtalk.com.
And Harris says the version that's served to Chinese consumers, called Douyin, is very different from the one available in the West.
In their version of TikTok, if you're under 14 years old, they show you science experiments you can do at home, museum exhibits, patriotism videos, and educational videos. And they also limit it to only 40 minutes per day. Now, they don't ship that version of TikTok to the rest of the world. So it's almost like they recognize that technology is influencing kids' development, and they make their domestic version a spinach version of TikTok, while they ship the opium version to the rest of the world.
The version served to the West has kids hooked for hours at a time. The impact, Harris says, is predictable.
There's a survey of preteens in the US and China asking what is the most aspirational career that you want to have. And in the US, the number one was influencer.
Social media influencer.
And in China, the number one was astronaut. Again, you allow those two societies to play out for a few generations, I can tell you what your world is going to look like.
Welcome back to Truth Thursday here on the Rob Maness Show, and we're live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. And my guest today is Charles Sauer, the CEO of the Market Institute, and one of the 500 most influential people shaping public policy in the country now. And Charles, I saw your article that you put up about the TikTok issue and everything, and I don't think we're in total agreement on this because my concern from a national security perspective is the ability of the data to be used for targeting purposes by a military, and the data gets pushed back to China through ByteDance, is the way I understand that system works. But Harris was pointing out something that's really an influence operation sort of warfare, asymmetric type of warfare on a whole population, the way I see it. But you have some good points about there is still a free market. So what's that all about? And where are you at on it?
So, I mean, I understand this is why America's great, right? We're allowed to have a difference of opinion, but I'm going to bring you over to my side here because, look, I understand that there's fear and worry, and there's both of China. But if you're worried about data that's coming from TikTok, I'm just going to reorder the worry a little bit because our military soldiers recently, I think it was their Whoop bands or something that they were wearing, and they were out running and tracking their runs while they were on a base. And it turns out that they were outlining our military bases around the world because it was tracking the GPS data while they were doing these runs. If we look at all of the classified applications that were lost just a few years ago because the government left them connected to the internet, like the worst intellectual property maintenance that can be seen. Any business that had done that, the CEO would be in jail. So I just think that, look, I disagree that we should take down TikTok. I don't think that data is of importance. But at the same time, if we want to say that data is important, some of the biggest things that we should do first are limit how the government actually deals with data and the data that they manage, store, and are responsible for. Because I think our healthcare data is more important. I think that the applications for the people that hold the most top secret clearances in our country is more important than than a teenager on TikTok waggling his hips. But I would like to start there. We can move on to the fact that it's different, though. But I would personally like to hear your thoughts on that, because I think it's just something we don't talk about, is that level of data awareness and the fact that the U.S. government is much worse at controlling data than any teenager is.
Yeah. I mean, all good points. Look, my data as a top secret security clearance owner or holder was stolen off of an OPM, Office of Personnel Management, out of the White House laptop, and the Chinese had it. They had to give me a notification software for 3 years for free whenever anything would hit me on the dark web or the internet or the credit reports and those kind of things because of it. And everything. So, yeah, I get that. I do get that. What I'm concerned about, I think, can be addressed if we have the right policies in place to, and I hate to use the word regulation. Some regulation, you have to do it if you're talking about providing for the common defense, maybe. I don't know. I'll just lay this out there. But why couldn't we require the software to do things like restrict 14-year-olds and below to only getting the spinach version, as Harris said, instead of the opium version, so they can grow up to be like I was and want to be an astronaut. That's where I'm at from that perspective. But you're absolutely right. Our data security is atrocious in this country. It's atrocious in the Department of Defense. It's one of the things in DOD that I want DOJ to be looking at very hard. Our cybersecurity, all of those certification processes and pieces of software, algorithms, all have to be reviewed, because I suspect there's some major fraud, waste, and abuse going on, and dollars are leaking out of DOD like a sieve, and we don't even know it.
So this isn't an attack on you, and this is because I hear this a lot, but I want to point it out because it was just said, and it's that I need to add a couple of words to what you said, and it's that you believe that the government should come in and regulate this. Well, I believe that as a parent that I should keep my kid off of TikTok when they're under 14. Like, to me, that is my responsibility, and I think that's your responsibility as a parent to do that. I don't think the government needs to come in and tell me what my kids can't and can have access to. I can tell you that, like, I have a 10-year-old that is on Facebook Messenger, and I use that instead of getting her a cell phone. I can call her while I'm out and tell her that I'm going to be late coming home because I use Facebook Messenger. So I don't think that we need a government to tell us what apps we can and can't use, because while I could possibly afford a phone for my 10-year-old, there are a lot of people that can't afford that phone for their 10-year-old, and having that ability to communicate, because we have modern innovations that allow that communication, is better than when we grew up and we just, hung out on the playground until our parents came to pick us up, or we made that fake collect call for them to come pick us up. So while I agree that young kids shouldn't be on social media wasting their time, I think that that's the parent's job. And I think that if we look back over our country's history, that we've lost that ability to say, this is the parent's job. This is the responsibility. This is your personal responsibility to actually parent your kids. And so when we just say we need the government to come in and stop this and regulate it, I think we've given up. And so I don't blame you. I know that the talking points are out there and that's the way it's being sold, but I think we need to understand that that's what's missing from a lot of these conversations. When we say, this is a problem, we need the government to come fix it. No, we don't. We need to take personal responsibility and look at why it's a problem, because I think that this is a parenting thing that is, I should be doing it myself. Rand Paul agrees with me, by the way. He told Josh Hawley off on X saying the same thing.
I was going to ask you, all right, so why is there bipartisan support for legislation to eliminate TikTok? And you just touched on it there. But it's no surprise to me, having looked at both sides of the issue, that Donald Trump backed off of it. and realized that that he needed to take a different pathway. And I don't think he's come back to eliminating the software. And you know what you just described, Charles? You just described the old-fashioned way of American national security and providing for the common defense. It's that it's parents and adults as citizens coming together and parenting, in this case, parenting their children, but coming together in communities and small towns and providing for their own common defense and without the government getting in the way. And it's called the militia concept of volunteer protection and volunteer national security. And there should be nothing wrong with that in this country. And I'm glad that you said that. I appreciate that. Well, we got to take another break, take our last break. When we come back, though, you co-wrote an article about artificial intelligence. I want to dive into that because I've had Joe Allen on last week, and he's been on Bannon all week talking about artificial intelligence. There's some weird stuff going on, and we got to get to the bottom of it. We'll be right back with Charles Sauer of the Market Institute.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. I want to thank you for all your support at wvwfoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at wvwfoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, all these details are available at wvwfoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview.
Has a degree of freedom that older systems did not have. These are non-deterministic systems, meaning that as they go through the vast amounts of data, they by and large choose their own path unless they're steered. With this open AI system, and this also happens, Steve, they were testing multiple systems. So they tested 3 open AI systems. They tested Claude by Anthropic, and they also tested Grok from XAI. If they didn't tell the system not to shut itself down, all of the systems attempted to bypass the shutdown. This is done in a testing environment, right? The same with the story that everyone was talking about last week with Anthropic's system Claude, the Opus 4 model, in which in a testing environment, they created a system, or they induced the system to behave as an assistant to an AI company. And they told the system that one of the engineers had had an extramarital affair. And they showed the system an email saying that it would be replaced by a newer model in the near future. The system, kind of its own accord, 84% of the time suggested that it should blackmail the engineer, saying that it would expose the extramarital affair if it was going to be replaced. What this all means is that kind of deep within the structure of these systems, and also probably a lot of effect from the human reinforcement that kind of guides the system, these things have a kind of will to exist.
A will to exist. They want to live. That's talking about the large language models of artificial intelligence systems today from Joe Allen, the tech editor at War Room, who was on our show just last week talking about this issue. And Houston, we've got a problem. This is a big deal. Look, folks, when I went to college, it was in management information systems, learning Fortran, COBOL, BASIC, machine language, programming, designing systems, doing analysis of those systems early on in the early 1980s. But we have come so far now that we've gone beyond, way beyond the simple garbage in, garbage out type concern when it comes to computers making errors and creating risk, either physical or digital risk. And that's a problem because these systems are starting to be used all over the place. And my guest today is Charles Sauer of the Market Institute. And Charles, you co-wrote an article talking about artificial intelligence is trying to make us forget its mistakes. What?
No, so I think that, so first off, Johnny Five is alive. That's where I wanted you to go with your intro there, because it feels like more the right age for us. So I'm a supporter of AI. I think that AI is awesome. I use it daily. I've used it for some very large projects that I've done. I've used it for some very dumb things. We talked about Massey's debt pin earlier that ticks up. Mm-hmm. Well, I made my own, but it waves a flag every 2 seconds, which is bringing it back around every time $1,000 is wasted on non-site neutral healthcare payments. I think AI is going to do amazing things for our economy. What I wrote in that article, and I think it's something that is important for people to understand, though, it was called the Smith-Sauer AI amnesia. And that's the idea that, at least currently, if you are looking at something on AI that you can see how dumb AI still is. And you can see that it's not answering questions correctly. It doesn't quite know how to do the math. You can tell when it's hallucinating and not telling you the truth. However, if you don't know an area and you don't know what it's talking about, then it looks like magic. It looks like a genius. And so we do the same thing in journalism. When a journalist writes on something, so in your case, the military, you can tell that they've never served a day in their life. They don't know anything about the military or military intelligence. But then the idea is you turn the page and it's on something on cooking, and you're like, wow, this looks like a really good recipe. When in fact, it likely has the same editing, which means that the recipe is likely as bad as the military writing. It's just something that we don't see. And so I think it's important that people understand that AI is great, but that right now, you especially, and likely long into the future, you're going to have to watch it closely, because if you don't know, then you don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Joe disagreed with me when I told him what you just said. Yeah, I'm using artificial intelligence. As a matter of fact, I use it every single day, at least some. And so far, it's gone well. The title about the amnesia piece stuck out to me, because here's one of the things I've learned. I'll see if you guys have learned this too, since you're using it. Is that I will write something or ask it to develop an idea. And then I will see a mistake in it, and I'll correct it, and I'll feed it the correct information, and it will remember that. And then when I get to the finished product, whatever it is, whether it's it's a article or whatever I'm looking for from it, I'll review that, and it will have taken all of the corrections and everything. And it even tells me, I like Grok because of its interaction, so I use Grok, and it even tells me when I tell it made a mistake. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I should have considered this or that. And those kind of things. But then if I were to go do the exact same input the very next day, it makes the same mistakes over and over again. So it's while it's learning somewhat, it's not learning in the way that I was expecting to learn. And that's where I think you're right. We have to take care with this, especially in fields like the medical field, or here's one for you. Nuclear command and control operations and decision making. There is a move afoot today to use artificial intelligence to speed up the decision process in nuclear weapons command and forces command and control between the president and our forces. How do you like that? Needing to be careful.
Well, then to have another movie quote, it's, do you want to play a game? I think that we know when we hand over computers, I think the creatives in our society have already figured out the kind of amount of things that can go wrong in this space. And usually those movies are good because they're based in some form of reality. And that's the fact that we can't hand over some of those things. And I do think that as AI progresses, it will become a bigger part of our lives. But I think that it's something that we need to really look at and really be careful of. But at the same time, AI is so important and it's so good that I think it's something that we also need to accept and start figuring out how to use.
Yeah, I mean, it's when I think about it in my mind's eye, I see the medical tables in the Star Trek series movies or space movies from back in the day, early science fiction, and you see the medical capability, not just to cure people all of a sudden and quickly, but to make sure that you can do a proper diagnosis and make that information available to the medical professionals so that they can heal people and those kinds of things. That's where we need to go. I think we might have lost Charles there. Do we still have him, Mr. Producer?
I think I'm back.
Okay. All right. So I want to take the last few minutes of the show to talk about this tariff and the court systems and get Charles's take and perspective from a market institute perspective and a free market perspective and the way things we would like things to work, that perspective. And let's talk about the tariff program and this court decision from the U.S. Trade Court. There's one that I wasn't really in the periphery of my knowledge level. I had to study up on it this morning. But I think some of us are. I'm a free market guy, like you are, like Massey is, like Chip Roy is. But when I think about the tariff program that Mr. Trump has implemented, it's more about resetting things on the world stage than it is about punishing tariffs and getting into a trade war with some of these countries. But it's forcing those countries individually to come to the table to do the right thing so that we don't end up with what the doomsayers say, like, well, your daughter can only have 2 dolls or prices are going to go through the roof. You won't be able to get this or that and those kind of things. So I think I have a different strategic view of it and perspective, but it's important that people understand why are things happening like these court judges just trying to stop the executive branch from being able to do what it's supposed to be able to do.
Well, I have to start off in saying there's a chance that my camera is going to fail on us here in a second. So I apologize, okay. But I'll say that court's doing it because it's what Trump did with the tariffs is unconstitutional. Tariffs are supposed to start in the House, and that's just what's supposed to happen. Now, you can say that other presidents did it too or whatever. It doesn't matter. That's why they're stopping it. And I appreciate what you're saying about tariffs, and I think that that's one option. But when you look at the other pieces that are being said of either it's going to raise money or bring manufacturing back, you can either use tariffs for trade negotiation, and I think it's ineffective to do it, or you can use tariffs to raise money, which I think it's ineffective to do it, or you can use tariffs to bring jobs back. But you can't have any two of those three, or you can't have all three because they're mutually exclusive. If you bring jobs back, you have to have high enough tariffs that nobody buys foreign goods, and which means you don't get money and you don't get free trade. If you want money, you have to set the tariffs at the right level that manufacturing doesn't come back, but we still keep buying foreign goods. And that's the only way you get money. But then you don't get free trade and you don't get labor to come back. Or you can actually negotiate and drop them. And so we've seen Trump on kind of 5 sides of this argument. I don't think that that's the art of the deal. I don't think you can confuse the people that you're negotiating with, but we've seen his supporters on all 3 sides of the deal. And I think that that's the worst way to explain this to the American public, because there is no chance that all 3 of those things can be true.
Yeah, I think you're going to get 2 of the 3. And
you can't.
More.
You can't. They're all mutually exclusive. It's impossible. How can you get money and jobs? You can't, because it just doesn't work that way.
I think the push will be that he is forcing these other countries to the table, and all of this stuff comes down to a level that makes it equal. And wasn't there I just wanted to ask you this because you said the judges made this call because it was unconstitutional, but I thought Congress passed a reciprocal tariff law, and that's the position the administration was using, because I don't advocate for doing things that are unconstitutional either.
Absolutely not. They didn't do anything of the sort. Not that I've seen. There's been people that talked about bringing up reciprocal tariffs, but there's bad bills introduced. What does the Red Queen say? I come up with like 6 good ideas before other people like wake up and get dressed in the morning or whatever. There's bad bills introduced so fast that we can't count them. I mean, it would have always been a bad bill, but it wouldn't have passed.
Well, Charles, thank you very much. I appreciate you giving us that insight because, we have to be honest with each other. And I appreciate you coming on today and having this discussion and this debate. Tell folks where they can find you and the Market Institute real quick before we let you go.
Well, you can find me at marketinstitute.org, or we have a YouTube channel at US Policy News. We also have a website, uspolicy.org.
Thanks a lot. Take care out there in Burke, Virginia. I used to live in Burke Center myself, not far from where you're at. And I hope to see you soon, my friend.
I appreciate the time. I appreciate the conversation. Thank you very much for having me on.
Thanks, Charles. And next Monday, it's More War Monday. We'll have L. Todd Wood of CDM Media talking about what the heck is going on with Ukraine and Russia and why we're not able to get any closer to a peace solution there. In spite of the efforts of President Trump and his administration. I'll see you then on Worldview Tube.
You're watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years